If you would have asked me almost a decade ago, Jean, would you be a homeschool mom? I would have said, no, that's weird. I didn't know. It was literally school is closed and we all came home. So I invested a ton of time in figuring out all the different kinds of learning resources, methods, styles available. You have way more time for learning than you even realize.
Welcome back to the OpenEd podcast. I'm your sometimes host, Ella, and today I have on Jean Lee. Jean is an absolute powerhouse. The first time that I ever chatted with her, I was so impressed and just absolutely floored by all that she's done. She homeschools her own children, and she's even kind of created an academy situation where she helps homeschool other families as well. So before we get into all of that, Jean, out of curiosity, did you always want to homeschool?
I did not always want to homeschool. Like everyone, COVID changed my family's lives as well. And my kids came home. We started in traditional classroom public school, but there were some challenges that I was aware of. I have three very unique learners, and they're highly gifted, twice exceptional. And that doesn't always work well in a traditional classroom situation. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And coming home gave me the opportunity to try something different. If you would have asked me almost a decade ago, Jean, would you be a homeschool mom? I would have said, no, that's weird. I didn't know. And I am so thankful now that I'm able to participate as a parent and be such a champion of school choice and alternative learning methods to help families truly create custom education is amazing.
So go into that a little bit. Was it a gradual experience going from, oh, I'll never homeschool to, you know what, maybe this actually has something for my kids in it? Was it a gradual experience and what started changing your mind?
It was not a gradual experience. It was literally school is closed and we all came home. So it was immediate for us. But interestingly enough, I see this happen everywhere I go. It doesn't matter if we're at soccer, if we are at ballet, if we are sitting on a park bench, if we were waiting at lacrosse. I talk to hundreds and hundreds of families every week, and conversations are always similar. Hey, is that your kid over there? Yeah, that's mine. She's 7. And we're homeschool family. Do you homeschool? No, we're in a traditional school at XYZ. Oh, have you ever considered it? Do you know about it? And before long, it may be the next week I see them. It may be a couple weeks later, or it may be that they see me somewhere and find me out and say, hey, Jean, I remember we talked about your family being homeschoolers. Can you tell me more about that? And one of the coolest things about being in that space is I love being family's first homeschool friend. I love getting to be the person who gives them that positive perspective. I didn't have that friend, and I sure wish I had, because my transition was hundreds of hours of research, understanding what is challenging for my kids, what is their learning method, how can I help them? And as a neuroscientist, understanding their cognition method was really important to me. So I invested a ton of time in figuring out all the different kinds of learning resources, methods, styles, um, types of alternative learning that's available. And I love that I get to make that transition easier, smoother for others. For me, it happened instantly because we were home, but I see it happening in a thoughtful, gentle way for many, many families now.
That is amazing. So your background is in neuroscience, you mentioned?
It is.
Okay, and what kind of a perspective, you already kind of touched on it a little bit, but what kind of a perspective did that give you going into homeschooling? Obviously, you knew what homeschooling was on this kind of general, in this general way, but really getting into the weeds about what is homeschooling, right? And then were there some biases that you had to kind of work through, or things that you were thinking that homeschooling was that you had to work through?
Absolutely. So there is definitely a general bias if you've never homeschooled or you don't know anything about it. This perception that we just stay home all the time, sit around our dining room table, all joyously reading books and learning together. There is also a bias that we're not learning deeply, that our children are not going to be smart because they're not taught by a licensed instructor. And something that I love is talking about those topics. And the reality is that we're never home. We are always learning deeply. we outsource many things. And when I say outsource, that means that we start our morning with piano lessons. So we drive to our piano instructor's house and do our piano lessons. And my kids start that when they're 3 years old because we have the time. My kids all play multiple sports. They take fine art lessons. They participate in clubs and classes. And I teach 2 full days of really deep learning in STEM topics. And so there are many, many people pouring into my children from a learning perspective. We're not staying home. Socialization is not an issue. We have way more friends because we have time for those friendships that we didn't have when the whole day was spent sitting in a desk. It's very, very different.
And you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I would love your perspective when you're talking to families that are just thinking about homeschooling, like they are just getting that thought into their mind. It's barely a thought, right? Like maybe they've encountered some challenges and they're like, maybe homeschool would be better. I don't know. What is the value that you put in front of them? Like what are your favorite things about homeschooling?
It's funny, families reach out with a handful of almost always the same questions. It would be one, our child is gifted and we feel like they're not being challenged enough in school. Two, we're concerned about the levels of safety in the classroom and what that means for a kid not being with us. Three, bullying. We don't like the social conflict that's happening. We would like a more gentle space for learning and we want it to be focused on academics and not all of those social challenges. Those are the biggest questions that I get and reasons why families say, we're thinking about something else, but we're not sure what to do. And then people always say, well, what are the pros or cons of home education and alternative learning? One, the biggest pro is more time with your children. You are so deeply and actively involved with them. You're spending the whole day together. And it's kind of funny because I have a lot of moms who will say, I couldn't imagine doing that. I couldn't do that, spend the whole day with my kids. Well, we do that when they're young and we enjoy that time. We soak it all in. And the reality is, culturally, our children function differently when they're not raised by peers. There's a different set of ideas when it comes to your family being your primary community. And there are a lot of books that have written about this idea of family being your primary community and that connectedness that comes with that, which is very different when you have that separation. Oftentimes I hear parents say, oh, well, that's just a tween thing. They just want to go to their room and hang out with their friends. I don't see that same thing happening in the realm of homeschooling. Families who are using home education are very connected. Where I go, all of my kids go with me all the time, every day, all day long. And that's how we work. If we're going to the grocery store, if we are going to someone else's class, if we're going on a play date, if we're going to a park, if we're going to a museum, everybody's going with. And when we sit down to have dinner at night, they're also all there. Nobody's going off to play video games in their room by themselves. We talk, we share stories, we talk about ideas, and it's a different connectedness that you have. And that only comes with time shared. Think of it how friendships develop and grow. You have to have time together for that to blossom. And it works the same with families. When you see your kid for an hour every night, you don't have that time to have connection.
Yeah, I love that point. I heard something similar where it was, I forget who was saying this, but it was something to the effect of at a certain point in their teenage years, your child determines who their number one trusted source is. And that will be who they turn to. And it's either their peers or it's their parents. And as a parent, you have to be very careful because um, when when a child like gets it in their mind that their peer is the first person that they should turn to, then when they're struggling, then when anything's going wrong, like they will shut you out and they'll go to their peers instead. And I was having a conversation with somebody that I know and I'm close to, and they were saying that it's like it's so weird to them that like some kids turn out just like their family and some kids like turn out the opposite. And I was sharing this thought with them because I think it probably relates where like um in those key moments when you are dealing with challenge, if you have built the underlying and fundamental, trust that you need in order to turn to your family, then those will be the values that shape those difficult moments versus the opposite. And like you don't necessarily know who your kids' friends are all the time, you don't know who their number one trusted sources are all the time. And even if you do, right, like you don't always know their number one values. And so it's a lot easier as a parent to just build that relationship. And I would love to hear a couple more things that you hear frequently from families. You said the first one is um, the biggest pro is more time with your kids, and you always hear families say that, like, oh, I can't imagine myself being with my kids so long. What else is a big pro, and what else do you hear families saying?
Sure. As a mom with 3 gifted learners, I can pour into them. I can let them learn as fast or as slow as they need. Now, typically, children who are highly gifted struggle in a traditional classroom because they're expected to either go along with their average peers, or if they're twice exceptional, some things will be really hard, painfully hard, and some things will be just so accelerated. Even advanced classes, even an AP level class is not accelerated enough for them. And therefore, what happens is they're actually put into the same groups as remedial students. They're put into groups with kids who have learning challenges. So they're not able to thrive. The traditional classrooms really don't have great accommodations for that situation. And it's neither good nor bad. It just is how the system functions. My kids are able to go quickly. So my oldest, all of my kids started reading when they were 3. Their education accelerated because of that. They had access to information and became very independent learners from a very young age. If they were in a traditional classroom, which I saw with my oldest, she was 7 years old in a class of peers, many of them who couldn't yet read. And she had been already reading for 4 years, reading well, reading at a high level. So accelerated learning is definitely a pro. And then depth of learning. So being able to experience having not just a book learning and a quiz, or there's no books now. Everything is on a Chromebook. So when kids go to school, they're handed a Chromebook. They don't even get a physical textbook, which is and can be a huge detriment for many students, especially kids with ADHD. They struggle without having persistence of information. And when you're skipping between screens, you don't have that. So
Mm.
being able to not only accelerate, go faster in subjects, but have a depth of learning that you can't get in a classroom. When we're studying a topic, we will study from a traditional textbook. We will seek out other books at the library. We will watch documentaries. We will research online. We will write essays, but we'll also take field trips. We go to Chicago often. We go to Cincinnati often. There's a whole group of kids that I teach each week that just took an international trip and traveled all over Europe together. And one of the classes that I cover is art history. They came back, they had been to the Louvre, they had seen the work of the masters, and it was so awesome to read their essays on those great works, having experienced it
That
firsthand.
is so cool.
Yeah, that's not something you
Or
get.
no, no, not at all. And I feel like the harder part is, like, even if, let's say, you go on some of those trips with your classes, it's like there's just like an underlying, at least this was my experience, there's just like an underlying sense of dread just because it's like school related. Like like it doesn't awaken the excitement or the curiosity in the same
Mhm.
way. And what else do families come to you and chat about? Like, what are they asking? What are they interested in? And what are their biggest hangups?
Oh, one of the biggest hangups is I could never do that. I could never teach my child math, literature, writing, uh, science. Those are always big concerns. But the reality is, when a licensed teacher goes to college, they don't go to college to learn all of the content that they're going to teach. So you don't go get a license to teach 4th grade and learn all the content for 4th grade. You use curriculum, which guides your learning. And it's the same way in homeschool. I have taught every grade from pre-K all the way up to 9th grade in every subject. And I do that through using quality curriculum. I choose what I'm going to use. I review the material, and then I have the freedom to add on all of the extras, all of the experiments and labs, and as I said, trips and documentaries. But it can be scary when you're first starting, especially if you have a young child and you haven't experienced a high level of independent learning in a child, and you think, I could never teach math I was terrible at math. One story I love to share is that I grew up learning procedural math. It was a huge detriment to me as a child. I always felt like I was bad at math. I didn't understand math. And when I started teaching my children at home, I chose Singapore Dimensions. I loved that curriculum because it has 3 models, 3 different methods for every single problem. And I suddenly had it click. I saw a visual method that worked for me, and I suddenly had number sense and I suddenly understood. Now, in my late 40s, was I bad at math? Let me tell you, previously in my career, before becoming a homeschool parent, I managed multi-million-dollar budgets to the penny for some of the world's largest brands. I was not bad at math. I just didn't have great number sense. I wasn't fast in my head because I didn't understand the way that I was taught. I love making this a game changer for kids and parents. When a parent now says to me, I'm not good at math, I tell them, you just don't understand yet, but you are. Everyone can be good at math.
I love, love, love that perspective. I feel like there's also this like fear of doing it right, right? And you mentioned the whole fact that teachers don't go to school and learn the whole curriculum and every single thing that they're going to teach, fourth grader, and then they're bound to it, right? They follow some steps. But I feel like there's this pressure, like, what if I do it wrong, right? Or like, what if I take a year and I'm trying to help my kids learn in the way that fits them, and then I feel like I failed, right? And then everybody's going to judge the fact that like I tried to do it and I didn't do it right.
I do a lot of parent mentoring. In fact, last weekend I spent about 5 hours with a mother who has an 8th grader, and she had that same fear. She said, "What if I mess up?" And I said, "You have taught your child the most important things in life. They can dress themselves, they can walk, they can feed themselves. They are functioning young adults doing well. This is just giving them knowledge." And the beautiful thing is you don't realize how much time you do actually have. I love using an online scheduling tool to lay out our lessons for the entire year. I had those same fears. And when I lay out my schedule, I realize, and I don't stress about it anymore because I have a visual. I can see our math curriculum. If we do one lesson every weekday, just 5 days a week, no extra time, scheduling in holidays and vacation breaks, we're still going to get done at the beginning of April. So one thing that we don't account for is all of the extra time and days that traditional classrooms taking off. When you come from that space, you don't have a visual of your schedule there. You just think they're going so many days and they must be doing so much. But in reality, you're going more quickly because you have a single student. You have way more days than you realize. And we actually go year round. My kids go year round. We just end one level and go on to the next. But it snowed in Indiana this week. So we had a great snow day. And I said, we're not doing school today. We're all going outside all day. And we did. And it was fantastic. And we had a blast. And we just came right back to it the next day. Was that time wasted or lost? No. Are we behind in any way? No. We also, if we travel, we'll take it on the plane. If we're driving on a Saturday, we drove to Florida several times in the last year. It's an 18-hour drive. That's a great amount of time to get all those math and grammar lessons done. So it's really, really flexible. On top of the time gained with each other, you have way more time for learning than you even realize. You're
I'm
not
curious
behind.
how you schedule things. So, like, well, whenever you started, you had a couple of older kids and a couple of younger kids, right?
I did.
How did you figure out where to begin with them and how much to start them on? Because there's always, or at least most families that start homeschooling, talk about this period of like deschooling, where like you have to remind yourself, like, I don't need them to sit in a chair for 8 hours a day. I don't need to feel like we're doing something for this whole period of time. It doesn't have to be me dictating a lesson to them for every single subject. Like this period of like deschooling where you kind of rewrite those rules inside of your head. Did you go through that as well? And then how did you find your family's happy medium for like what our schedule looks like?
I love this topic because deschooling is spoken about a fair amount. And I am not a fan of deschooling. Here's why.
Interesting.
I'm not an advocate. Here's why. I know that kids function better when they're on a schedule and have clear expectations. They feel safer knowing what their boundaries are and where they should be going and what they should be doing. They don't have the social emotional ability to manage their own details when they're young and they need guidance. So what I found is it's deschooling, but also if you take too long of a break, it's a nightmare to get them back on track. Everybody's fighting and screaming, and nobody wants to go back to doing grammar and math and sit down and do the work. It becomes a battle. And so I've had this discussion with many, many parents who agree that even taking short breaks is not worth the battle. So we may, if it's a holiday break, do a lighter load. We may just do grammar and then math one day, but we never stop. We rarely take a long break. And if you're coming out of a traditional classroom, that deschooling period, I would describe it more as a mental mindset for a parent rather than a reset for a child. A child going into what I often see as deschooling means they're chilling at home. There's a lot of video games. There's a lot of playtime. And if you suddenly say, all right, let's snap back into it and get going on this essay writing today, they're not with you. They're not going to go along. So I don't typically recommend deschooling. It can easily run into no schooling, but there is a transition of what does this look like? My youngest like to wake up at 9. So we will wake up at 9, we'll go to our piano lesson, and then they'll get started on their work right before we do lunch. We're going to know that we have 2 hours of karate in the evening. And so I accommodate our school day that they're going to be doing some of their work while we're waiting on their sibling during that karate lesson. So that's an extra 2 hours that we're doing math or writing in the evening. The day is very fluid and flexible from that perspective, but I don't typically stop.
Interesting. Can you go more into that structure with flexibility? Because I think whenever I hear structure, it sounds it tends to get to the point where it's like we're doing this and this and this and this and this way. And it sounds like you're not like that at all, where you understand your kids' rhythms. Like you said, my kids like to sleep until 9, so that's what they do. And then they know that whenever they get up, like here's what happens next. But I'm curious how you found that like balance between structure and flexibility, and like does it start with you? Does it start with the kids? Does it start with kind of like you picking something and then kind of adjusting as time goes on?
So it definitely was a transition when we started. For myself and my kids, I definitely had a mindset of, okay, at 9 o'clock, we're going to do math. At 10 o'clock, we're going to do science. And it's also very much child dependent. Some children need that hourly reminder. They don't do well with fluidity. And it also is seasons. So I would say when my oldest was probably in the 4th, 5th, 6th grade season, she very much needed the time schedule. She needed that bit of pressure for her to get through because she could sit there and look out the window all day and do one math problem. I mean, the time just passes for her. But my younger ones more easily get going. They just want to get the work done and get through it because they know we're going to move on to something else after it's done. And so it is child dependent, knowing how much rigor do you need in the schedule. Some kids need to sit down every morning and they have to focus. My oldest ADHD can be a real challenge. So knowing this is our chunk from 8 until 11 every single day, we do school. That works for some kids and they need that. For others, we are not on that rigorous schedule anymore. My oldest has really developed her executive function skills, and so we're more fluid. I use a scheduling tool that I schedule out all of our lessons on for the day, not by the hour, but for the day, for the entire school year. It takes me one weekend to do that. That's something that I cover in the workshops that I host to help families understand how do I lay this out? How do I plan out and know what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, how long it's going to take? And then you do find a groove. You do figure out. I don't recommend doing tons of activities when you first start because there's so much fun to be had that you end up having to say no to way more than you can attend. But we also enjoy doing a lot of sports. We enjoy doing a lot of music and art and our friendship time. So I make sure that I have a good academic schedule and we work our day around that. Every day is different for my family. I teach classes 2 full days a week. for portions of the year. And on the semesters that I'm not teaching, then we're full force doing science labs. But on the semesters that I am teaching, there's no science labs going on because that's a big commitment during a day to get all the things out. Now, for other families, there are working parents. I have a lot of families who homeschool are using alternative learning that are two working parents. I have moms that their kids come and learn with me on Wednesdays and Thursdays, and the other days they might take other classes part of the day. They have blocks for their core learning at home, but it's really just managing the puzzle, putting the pieces together. And I get that question a lot too. I want to touch on that of how do I work and homeschool? It's not easy. It takes a high level of organization, but it's possible. I work full time, sometimes 50 to 60 hours a week, but I make it fit in. The pieces are organized. My children know their expectations, and it takes a high level of parent engagement.
What are some of the tools that you rely on for that? So like you mentioned your scheduling tool. Is that a tool that the kids have access to and can kind of see like, okay, this is what's expected of me?
It
And
is.
then okay, I was hoping so, and I assume so because it sounds like your kids are very bought into their own education as well. Like they're
Mhm.
happy to know and happy to like get ahead on at times, and like they see the things that they need to do
They know the expectation. Some days are easier than others.
for sure.
They're not excited like, yes, I can't wait to do that math book. No, but we know that with the fun comes the learning. And they know that's their
Mm-hmm.
job right now is to do the learning. So the scheduling tool that I love is Homeschool Planet. Now, I started like many homeschoolers when they first start out with a paper calendar. And I quickly realized there are too many things that bump in this schedule. And I found myself constantly erasing and moving. And there was no way for me to quickly or easily move things out for the entire semester when we weren't going to duplicate lessons. It was so time consuming. Then I thought, well, I'm going to use an Excel spreadsheet because I'm a master at that. And that seems easier. It was the same amount of work. It was not easier. It was not designed for that. I also tried Google Calendar and Google Classroom, not designed for this type of organization. Now, my professional background is in user experience. So understanding when things work well and how to make them efficient is what I did for a living. And Homeschool Planet was absolutely the best tool that I found. If I say, what is the best thing that I spend money on each year? It's that tool. Now, I
Very,
just want to
very
say,
cool.
I'm not an affiliate. They didn't pay me to say that, but it is my favorite tool.
How do you set expectations with your kids? Like, I feel like that is difficult at times. It sounds like that is kind of just the way that your family runs, that you've taught them from an early age that, like, here are our expectations, here, here's what we do. But I would love a little bit of insight into that because I think, like, getting kids motivated to do the thing is very difficult for a lot of homeschool families. And I think something that is necessary is kind of this habitual, like, this is what we do, right?
Definitely habitual. I mean, you have to be consistent and persistent in your message of this is what is expected. Also, using Homeschool Planet, each of my children have a login. So they can log in separately. They don't have
Right.
access to change the schedule, but they have access to check off the work that they're doing. And that is their responsibility. Even my 4-year-old logs into her schedule. She knows how to get on the laptop. It gives them ownership in and have some skin in the game. So giving them visibility to the expectations, and I teach this to all of my students as well. I want them to be independent learners. I teach 130 middle schoolers. I tell them it is your responsibility to own this, not your parents to remember what is due and how to do it. They're not here. They don't have the instructions. It's yours. And so I need you to own it and I need you to manage it and I need you to do it. And I take that same approach with my kids in all of their learning. Um, they can see they have full visibility to what's available. And the other thing is, I don't just say, well, just do the next lesson in your book. That's not giving them a level of accountability. That's giving them the freedom to pass or take it. Having something assigned for that day is guiding them down the path of the real world. As adults, we have responsibilities every day. If I don't take care of my responsibilities, one, I would lose my job, or two, my family would not run well. We all have things that need to get done in a timely manner. It's important to get them going down that path and give them access to tools that allow them to see that early on. Now, that sounds kind of tiger momish, right? Gosh, this is totally orchestrated. However, when kids know what the expectations are, they have a visual to see it, which is extra important for kids with ADHD, then you can start coaching them on real life expectations.
That's very fascinating. How did you do that when they were young? Like, it sounds like it sounds like you're the kind of parent that probably did that when they were young as well.
Even my
Did you?
4-year-old logs in. My 4-year, and we don't do any online learning. So we use textbooks for our core learning and all of our subjects. But the online calendar, when I say log in, they log into Homeschool Planet. They look at the schedule that I've created for the entire year. They can see what they've completed and what they haven't. You know, kids can be famous for, well, I did that math. And maybe they only did one problem of the math. It wasn't checked. Or maybe they skipped 2 lessons. And now we're on Wednesday, but Monday and Tuesday wasn't done. They're going through Wednesday. But this gives them a visual of, oh, wait a second. That lesson from Monday, lesson 37, is still red. That's not done. Lesson 38 also is still red. That's not done. So I shouldn't be going on to lesson 39. I need to back up and start where I left off. The other thing that I think is really important is teaching kids that this is not failure. This is not bad. You're not wrong or behind. It's teaching them to consistently move forward as independent learners. No one's in trouble for not getting a lesson done on Monday. Maybe we had a doctor's appointment and something came up. And so having that positive, optimistic approach also is vital to creating that level of independence and engagement. They know they're not going to get in trouble. They're not going to be graded an F because it wasn't done or handed in, right? It's just a tool for them to know they're going to stay on track.
It's quite fascinating to me. Like, the more that I hear homeschool families talking about their approaches to homeschooling, the more it becomes clear that there's a very strong correlation between the way you homeschool and the way you parent. And and the way that your household runs and the way that your homeschool runs, and like the things that your kids expect and know you expect of them, and the things that in a school environment they expect and they know you expect from them. And I think that's really interesting, just like on a personal note for me, thinking about how would I want to homeschool in the future. Like, it is very closely linked with the question, how do I want to parent as well? And do you ever talk about that, or do you ever think about that in your own experience?
I think about that often because we're as a family unit, we're together all day, every day. So everything we do, my kids are famous for saying, my mom's always about learning. Everywhere we are, if we're at a park, I will look at that insect. But now they're curious because I sparked that and said, what is that? What's going on over there? Let's look that up. Let's use Google Lens and check it out. What is that? What is that leaf? What is that tree? I am equally as curious. And I think if you are curious as an adult, it becomes enjoyable. Homeschooling is great fun if you're a curious parent. Now, it's not without challenges. It's hard. It's a really difficult endeavor to juggle and manage and fight the battles. Every one of us has battles. If I said my kids wanted to gladly wake up in new school every day, I would be lying. It's not that way for any of us. That picture you see on Instagram of a beautiful Charlotte Mason family sitting and reading a book only lasted for 3 minutes. And then the baby started crawling away, and the next little one started screaming, and the other one had to go to the bathroom. And that's not reality. That beautiful picture around a dining room table is not real. It's crazy. And by the time you have 3 kids, and I have many friends who have more, I have friends who have 8 kids that are homeschooling. It's madness. It's chaos. And that's where the name, the Academy of Chaos came from. That was our original homeschool name, was the Academy of Chaos. Because a lot of times you're just in survival mode. And then, you know what? Something will throw a monkey wrench, like your car breaks down, or someone gets sick, or everybody gets sick, or, you have a death in the family, or travel. Just all of the things that come as life. However, I will say when that chaos ensues, This lifestyle of home education makes it a lot easier to pivot. We have experienced all of those things during our home education journey. And, when my mother in law passed away and we needed to travel, I didn't have to have that concern of, oh gosh, we have to fly because we can only miss 10 days of public school before we're going to get a truancy letter. No, we were able to drive, which was more affordable for my family. We were able to spend time as much as we needed when my mother-in-law was in hospice and be with her. We were able to, celebrate her life for the time that we needed together. We didn't have to rush. When we have days of illness, I don't have to worry and send my kids to school sick because I don't want them to miss a day because we're going on vacation for spring break. So I need to save those days. When my kids are sick, they're homesick. Now they're also kind of, no, I say, if you're too sick to go anywhere, you better do some of that grammar because you're just laying in bed. But I don't have to send them when they're unwell either. I think that's a big bonus.
Yeah, that's amazing. You mentioned that like pretty homeschool picture of like, 3 kids around a table, all are happy, the whole world is peaceful. And like everybody wants that ideal. It's like the perfect ideal, right? But that's never the reality. So, as a homeschool mom that has gone through all of those challenges before, what is the best way to like help your help your family get to a point where it's not perfect, but it's better most of the time?
Let me tell you what the beautiful looks like for me. The
I would
beautiful
love to
looks
hear it.
like for me when we wake up in the morning and we get to just have a gentle breakfast together. We don't have to hurry up, get your backpack, get dressed, the bus is coming. We don't have that. We get to casually eat breakfast and enjoy that time together and talk about, hey, what did you like about this weekend? Or this is the schedule for this week, or this is what's coming up. It's also when I pick up my daughter from forest school and she gets home and she unloads her pockets and she has a pocket full of June berries that she wants to share because she snacked on them and she thought they were amazing. So she brought some for everyone else. It's seeing my kids enjoy nature because we can go to a park and run around and they play in the mud and it's a hot mess, but it's okay because we have time to do that. We can go home. It's sitting and writing essays together, things that are really hard if you have a reluctant writer, but you can peacefully sit next to each other and take as long as you need to do that. And we can go sit outside in the swing and do it together. That's the beauty in homeschooling.
Mm.
It's messy, it's chaos. It's not that picture that we think it is, but the beauty exists and it's amazing.
I actually really love that visual that you paint because it sounds like it's not that you schedule your kids to the point where we have to go, go, go all the time. It's more so we have things to do, but like if there's something better or if there's a moment where we just want to pause, then we can. Like there's flexibility in our time. However, if it's the question of like we're just gonna sit here and like do nothing, or we're just gonna sit here and just like watch TV. It's like, no, we actually have things to do. Like we have places to be and things to do and check boxes to check off. Like you're never at a point where you're bored. However, if there's something like going outside and playing on the swings, or for example, like eating a really slow morning breakfast together, like there is time for that too. And I actually really, really like that picture because I think it is more realistic, right? Like the go, go, go will burn out any homeschool mom at some point. And the kids a lot of the time. But I feel like that balance between we have things to do. If you don't have anything to do, there is a list of things for you to do over here and you
Yep.
know where to find them. But also, um, like if we're at the park and we get like really immersed into something, that's what we're gonna do instead.
I think finding those moments of pause exist consistently. We were going somewhere last week and we were on a timeline, but my middle daughter saw an insect and she loves insects right now because she's in forest school and they've nurtured that part of her, which I love. She said, I need to know, what is this insect? And I was about to get in the car and I paused and I said, this is not a life or death situation. If we are 5 or 10 minutes late, there are no consequences that anyone will be injured. So I stopped and I went and I looked and we used Google Lens and we inspected the insect and decided what it was and talked about it on the entire drive to our destination. That's the beauty. We were doing all the things. Now my kids also, we love video games as much as the next. And we tend to play games that are community-based games. So where everybody gets to play together, or Switch, where everybody gets to play together. My kids love Wii Sports. And that's fun, but they're never so bored that they need to sit there and play or watch TV all day long, because those activities, those play dates, those sports, those art and music lessons, the things that are nurturing and pouring into them in the real world take a precedent, and they've learned how to enjoy that.
Do you kind of time box things as like I wonder, like as a guardrail? So for example, like there's a time box of like an hour and then you have something else and it's kind of like a guardrail. Like if it goes a little bit over, it's okay. But also like you don't want them to play for 5 hours and then just like be like, oh, but mom, like we didn't know.
That is a dangerous situation with kids who have ADHD, because it quickly becomes a dopamine seeking behavior. So
Mm,
when you use devices, and I'm not an anti screen time mom, I think screens bring value and information. They are great tools. But when you have a student with ADHD, it can be very dangerous. If you are using that as a reward, it is probably the absolute
mm,
worst reward. So adding a time box of every day you're going to get 1 hour of screen time is a detriment. You're setting yourself up for a
interesting.
struggle. And using it as a reward, even worse. Because if you're asking a kid, okay, I want you to do these dishes, I want you to fold your laundry, I want you to pick this stuff up, and then you will get your reward of 1 hour of screen time, you are asking them to do the absolute worst job in the shortest amount of time to get the reward that is going to give them the dopamine release that they want. And
Interesting.
it's not a want, an intellectual want. It is a craving in their brain that they cannot control. And so I don't like to work within those constructs. I like it to be a pop-up surprise. Today, guess what? We don't have anything planned this afternoon. Why don't we sit down as a family and let's play Family Feud, or let's play Wii Sports Soccer, or let's do the skiing game. I tend to also lean towards things that are learning focused versus individual play, things like Roblox, things like Minecraft, or isolating activities versus community activities. And what you select does make a huge difference.
That's interesting. I actually I love that perspective, and I'm glad that you shared that. Is that the main way that your kids use technology? Is in like a more of like the video game type of technology, or like the TV type of technology? And then I'll ask you about like educational technology. But like, for video games and TV and movies and that stuff, is it like they usually don't know it's coming, and then I usually just say, hey, today we don't have anything. Like, let's do this. Like, obviously, you're a neuroscientist, and that's something that you really appreciate is understanding how the brain works with things. Um, so that actually works better, you said, for ADHD kids. Does it work better for all kids?
In general, I think it does work better for most kids. I
Interesting.
hate to say all because there's always an exception,
For sure.
but it does work better for most kids. It's a challenging reward to offer. It's a guarantee you can't always provide, and in my opinion, it's asking for a meltdown. So don't make that the choice. I always choose quality time over anything that's isolating from a learning perspective, and from a what do we use technology for perspective. It's fun, it's entertaining. We're heavy users of technology in our house. We have all kinds of different, you know, laptops, tablets, phones. We switch all of the things that everybody likes to use. But I love that I have set up this construct. And for me, I'd say the proof is in the pudding, because my kids, although they would love it and they would ask for it, it's not their first choice. They ask, can I go outside? When it's snowing, can I go outside? When it's raining, can I go outside? When they see that there's flowers blooming, can I go outside? They want to investigate something in real life. And what I know to be true for all of us, I will say, is that human connection is nurturing. It helps us grow. It helps us feel fulfilled. It helps us have a positive outlook on life. It helps us have connection. It lessens anxiety and depression. It's a vital part of the way that we're designed. And so seeing them lean away from the world of tech is important. They're healthier and happier because of that. Not to say we don't have it in our world. So it's a part of our world that's here to stay.
That's very interesting. Before we hopped on, you also said that you're very excited and fascinated by what tech and AI in the learning space can do as well. So obviously, you're not anti this in your family. It's not like, oh, we tend toward books and nothing else. Like, obviously, that's not true. However, it seems like you have a really good grasp on it, and your kids do, as tech as a tool, and like tech is not the very first thing that I like lean toward all the time. What are you most excited about in tech and AI for learning purposes?
For a long time, I have been very curious about the idea of technology as an intellectual prosthetic. So, how do we use technology and really programs that are AI supported? And this is something that I've been talking about and thinking about for 20 years. This is something that has been on my mind and I've written about and I've integrated for a very long time from a cognitive neuroscience perspective. But how do I use those tools to enhance what I already have? So, the way that looks in education is when I teach, everything is executive function focused, developing a whole child's thinking, developing them to become strong problem solvers, to become critical thinkers, to become good communicators, to function well in public speaking and together as a team. All of those qualities are what are growing them to be the leaders in the future. Knowing how to use tech is a small part of that. It's important. A lot of people say, when do I teach my child typing? When do I allow them access? My 4-year-old takes typing lessons. She types with all fingers. She's not a 2-finger typer. It's important. It's part of our world. It's never going away. Very few of us are ever going to just go live off grid, right? And so to use those tools in the future, what is to come doesn't yet exist. What they're going to use in their jobs, the jobs they're going to do, the world they're going to live in does not yet exist. It is so rapidly changing and expanding, and AI is in an infantile state, right? How do I create strong, wise humans that can then use those tools well? To use AI well, what do we need? We need to write a good prompt. It doesn't just spit out the information, right? Someone has to write a prompt to gather what we need as a solution. And I teach these kids in my own how to use tools. Is AI going to take away my job as an instructor? No. Is it ever going to be able to? I love telling my daughter, you should be a plumber. Is it ever going to fix a toilet? No, it never will. But it's going to be a tool that enhances all of those jobs. There are jobs that will take coding. Likely it will overtake those type of roles. But someone is still always going to have to create what are the project requirements? Where are the problems we're trying to solve? And that takes critical thinking. It takes communications. It takes being a strong writer. Those skills are always going to be necessary. And that's what I focus on curating in education.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic for me as well, because I've seen a lot of friends of mine go through like different periods of their life, and what AI has done in a lot of ways, even already in its infantile state, is it's taken the beginner, right? The beginner role. So like, for example, like writing copy for things, writing code for things. Like it replaces the beginner because it can do things very, very well, but it still needs somebody that can like read and know what great looks like, right? There's somebody that knows how to ask the right prompts. But I think what's really cool that I love about homeschooling, especially like as this develops, is that normal students have to go a certain pace. And then usually, whenever they get out of college, they are just now getting into a workforce. They're just now getting experience with any sort of a field. But I feel like, especially looking toward the future, homeschool kids will have an advantage with the fact that like you can start learning about the thing that you're very interested in way early, and then that beginner status of like, okay, well, we're just going to write something. And most of the time in the past, at least, like beginners don't always write the best thing. Well, now AI can do that, right? And so you can just graduate to like an intermediate level or a little bit higher. And so it becomes a lot easier to be hired, especially whenever there are things that are competing with the beginner level. Um, and I really, really love that. I have one final question for you as we wrap things up. So I am really curious to hear your perspective on curriculum. It sounds like you've chosen your curriculum very particularly, that you care about different types of approaches when it comes to the way that you teach your kids. And the you mentioned math as an example. Like, there are different ways of teaching math, and what do you look for in curriculum that you will teach your own children, and then also that you'll teach in your classroom setting where you're teaching 130 kids?
Well, I think the important thing to know about curriculum is how to recognize what is curriculum and what is practice, what
Mm,
is used for just enrichment learning versus what is an actual lesson and what is included in that. And that's one of the biggest things when I host my curricula library and I mentor parents and I do workshops is that they don't even know the difference. They don't even know that it exists. They think any type of learning material is curricula, when in reality, curricula will include guidance and a clear lesson of how to, whatever it might be, math, writing, grammar, reading, comprehension, social studies. It will have a clear lesson. It will not just be practice problems. And one of the biggest challenges I find with parents who come to me, they've been homeschooling for 3 or 6 or 9 months, and they say it's a battle every day, Jean. They don't want to do it. They're fighting, they're crying, they don't understand it. I don't know how to teach it and help them. And then I say, bring your materials. Let's sit down and look at this together. And what they will bring almost exclusively is workbooks. And those workbooks
interesting.
do not have lessons. So it goes back to the idea of expectation with your child. Can you expect your child to complete algebra if you have not taught them how to solve the problems? You cannot just give them a problem and say, solve it, when you haven't given them the material to learn it. No one just learns by osmosis and knows it. It goes for every subject. And that is the biggest challenge that I see is having that discussion of what is curriculum, teaching parents to recognize it and discern, what do you need? Do you need just practice, or do you need something with lessons? And I go through that and help them know, here's a visual of something with lessons. So when you're looking for something to educate your child, look for this. Now let's talk about your child's learning style. Is your child visual? Do they need clear visual models to help them progress? That's something that's typically important for ADHD kids with ADHD. Do they need something that is spiral or mastery? In any different subject, it could be different. You have a reluctant writer, you're going to want something that has very slow, repetitive lessons because they're going to need to build confidence. If you have someone who is an accelerated reader and writes very well and quickly, then you're going to have something that is mastery style and goes fast. You're not going to need a lot of review. The same applies to math, but understanding the difference between what is a workbook, what is practice, and what is curricula to suit your child's needs, that's the first step.
Do you think most curricula does a good job of building on itself, or no?
I don't think most curricula is necessarily intended to build on itself, nor does it need to. So let me give you an example. When my kids are learning writing, we're not going to use the same, there's not a K through 12 curricula that we're going to buy the same book and use every single year. Um, There's a really great writing curricula that I love. It's by Thoughtful Learning, and their books are, it'll say grade 4 and 5, grade 6 and 7. And the way that I use that is in fourth grade, we will do heavy writing and we'll do light grammar. And that year is really focused on building and developing confidence, fluidity, understanding genres, knowing how do I write a research report versus how do I write a review versus how do I write a critical thoughtful essay with opinions, growing that ability. And then the next year, if it's grade 4 or 5 for that level, the next year we're not going to do it. The next year, what we're going to do is we're going to work on research skills, We're going to be heavy in grammar. And so that is something that stands out as different from traditional
That's very
classroom
cool.
learning. Traditional classroom learning, every single year, you're going to be going through a spiral of the same stuff. That's
Mhm.
because you have a group of kids who are expected to function in the average. You're not having custom education. And so you're having the lowest and the highest going along the same path. You don't know who got it and who didn't. You really don't. But when I'm creating custom education for a small learning pod or my own children, I know exactly where they are. I know exactly what their challenges are. I know exactly where their ease falls. And then I can push them a little bit more or spend a little bit more time. We don't have to function on reviewing grammar every year over and over and over because I know they've got it.
Very, very, very fascinating. What as a parting note, I'll ask really quickly about places that people can find you. But before I do, where did you learn all the things that you learned whenever you were trying to, I don't know, figure out the best methods for you to go, the best pathway for you to build your children's homeschool journey? What are some resources that you'd recommend for people?
Well, I list everything on my website. If I
Amazing.
found it to be fantastic, I list it there. I put it on my feed, on Facebook, on TikTok, on Instagram. My website is theacademyofchaos.com. All of my social channels are by the same name. It's easy to find me. Um, and if there are questions, I am always happy to be a support, be a mentor, be the friend that I needed when I started. How did I learn all of these things? Thousands and thousands of hours of research. And I hope that I can save a little bit of that time for someone else who's just beginning.
This has been amazing. Everybody, please go find Jean, go find the Academy of Chaos if you're interested in learning more. Go read up on those resources. I know I definitely am going to. And I hope that we see more of you soon, Jean.
Thank you so much for having me today. This was a fantastic discussion.